Item 1 considers recommendations from the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee to amend Section 43D, Citizens Review Board on Police Practices and related charter sections. We initially heard reform proposals at our June 15, 2015 meeting and again at the January 13, 2016 Rules Committee. The Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee provided the following recommendation at their March 23 meeting. This is on a motion by Councilmember Gloria, seconded by Councilmember Cole, and approved unanimously, 4-0. Amend the City Charter Section 43D to rename the Citizens Review Board as the Community Review Board. Require that the Review Board review all cases involving in-custody deaths and officer-related shootings, and replace references to citizen with community member. 2, recommend the mayor's office extend the terms of members from 1 year to 2 years, develop a process by which Citizens Review Board members can audit Category 2 complaints and pull specific cases for review, and include funding for an independent counsel to provide additional advisory capacity to the Citizens Review Board, and recommend that the city attorney retain outside counsel for this purpose. Now I'd like to turn it over to Charmaine Mosley, Executive Director of the Citizens Review Board, for her presentation. And after that, we will hear an organized presentation from Women Occupy San Diego. I note for the public speakers on this item, since there are a number, will be limited to 2 minutes per person. How much time would you like for your presentation, ma'am?
15 minutes.
Okay.
Good morning, and thank you, Council President Leitner, Council President Pro Tem Emerald, Council Member Kate, Council Member Kersey, as well as staff. I would also like to thank the CRB's second Vice Chair, Doug Case, for joining me here at the table, as well as CRB members who are in the audience. More than 25 years ago, San Diego realized that the city had a problem with and introduced Proposition G. The CRB was created without subpoena power. This is important because right now there are still cities without civilian oversight boards in place. This board is very unique in that it's a collaborative, independent review model. This board has up to 23 appointed members, as well as 23 prospective members. That's a very large board. What makes this board unique is that in addition to reviewing cases investigated by Internal Affairs, the CRB is given the entire case file, including body camera video, which is very important right now. The CRB knows the discipline of the officer in those sustained cases. Other cities do not get that type of information. They do not get the discipline of these officers. This board is also given and reviews all in-custody and officer-involved shootings. In other cities, families would have to file a complaint, but Internal Affairs gives the CRB these types of cases without a complaint being filed. That's very, very important. The board can also recommend policy changes to the police department. This makes the board extremely unique. Within the past year, since I've been executive director of the CRB, I've been working closely with the CRB to make sure that they are following their objectives. This group is empowered, it's an independent citizen group, and they ensure that these complaints that they review are done fairly, thoroughly, and completely. As I mentioned before, they are also able to recommend policy changes, and they operate transparently. We are continuing to work on the processes of the board to make sure that they are becoming more transparent, whether it's through the website, and Doug is going to mention more of the process improvements in a minute. But we know that transparency is very, very important to the community. As I mentioned before, that the board reviews cases. They review those serious cases, Category 1 cases. Category 1 cases are excessive force cases, as well as criminal conduct, discrimination, slurs. They also investigate Category 2 cases, and when those Category 2 cases are combined with Category 1 cases. I am very proud to be the executive director for this board. This board is a very, very active board. They have very active committees, and I want to thank each and every one of them for the time that they put in. Not many individuals want to be able to put this time in, and I want to thank all of them because, you know, as we move forward, I believe that this is going to become a better board, a better oversight board. There's going to be greater transparency given to the community. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Case, who's going to talk about the upcoming improvements and improvements that we've made to the board from last year up until now. Doug?
First, you'll see there some of the more recent improvements we made to the board, just highlighting some of them. We've improved our tracking system so that we now are able to sync our information with that of internal affairs, and that was information that wasn't available as efficiently in the past. We've updated our website. We've revised our complaint form. One thing that's made a monumental difference is body-worn cameras. We're now able to see exactly what happened, and it makes the entire process much easier and more accurate and more efficient by using those. We completed the annual report, which will be presented today at the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee. We recently developed a procedure to review discipline. In the board's previous history, all they did was receive notification of what discipline it was without comment from the board. We developed a process where we now are able to engage in dialogue with the police department regarding a discipline that has been administered, and have made some changes to our review process and our report writing. Go on the next slide. Some of the upcoming things that we're planning on doing, rather than going through the entire list, basically what we're attempting to do is to try to make the board more representative of the community, and that's going to involve a lot more community outreach to make people aware of who we are, to recruit new members, to inform the community of the processes of the board, and to help build trust and create greater transparency. Let's move on to the next one. We recently had a retreat where we looked at the strengths and weaknesses of the boards and developed strategies for improving the board, and came up with a long list of things we wanted to focus on, and then we set some priorities from that, and we divided that into different committees for assignments. The first one is the Rules Committee, which I happen to chair. The first item there is continuing to work with internal affairs with regard to flexibility. And that relates to the fact that all of our work, by its nature, has to be done in internal affairs, and that creates a constraint because we have to go to internal affairs during their working hours and so forth, and it makes it difficult for working people to, be able to participate because they have to be able to spend a large number of hours during working hours down at IA. And so we're trying to get more flexibility on how we can accomplish our work, and we also are making some significant process improvements to make sure that our reviews are done in a more thorough and independent fashion. The next committee is the Outreach Committee, and some of the things they're exploring is to create a public liaison, public official liaison committee, which would be working to keep you folks in the mayor's office and other people informed of the work of the board, and then beyond that, to reach out to the broader community to make sure that community organizations and the media and so forth are, made more aware of what the board's doing. Next committee is continuing education. The board makes a attempt, or actually requirement, that we do continuing education. We have to do ride-alongs, but we also have many different opportunities to go to seminars and police academy classes and so forth. In addition, at our open meetings, we usually have speakers to educate ourselves and the community on issues. We want to bring in more community organizations to make presentations, and to have more presentations on the process of investigating itself. And then finally, the policy committee, we want to investigate, and the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee agreed with us on that, the possibility of utilizing independent legal counsel for issues that are not related to city policies and procedures. And we think that'll be an improvement. Go to the next one. Some of the recommendations that the CRB is making to the city is that we believe we need additional resources. We appreciate the fact that we once again have a full-time executive director. For several years we had to do with a part-time executive director, and that limited the ability of the board to do its job efficiently. But we still see a need for having a full-time executive secretary. We would like to have greater transparency to be able to, A, tell the complainant more about what decisions were made and why those decisions were made, and beyond that, to tell the broader public about that same information. Right now, our complaint letters, our letters to the complainant are very limited, and we don't give any information to the public about our cases other than statistical. And the county provides much more detailed information about their work, redacting, specific names of officers and so forth. And we've asked legal counsel to see how we might be more transparent and provide more information to complainants and the public in general. And we also would like to see the San Diego Police Department's policies and procedures more accessible to the public. Most police departments, especially large police departments like LAPD, have their policies and procedures online, with the exception of some tactical things like SWAT procedures. And the San Diego Police Department has, at this point in time, declined to do so. We would like to see that happen. And then finally, for the last slide, these were the recommendations that Chair Leitner mentioned that came from the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods with regard to a charter review or charter changes. The first one would be a name change from a Citizens Review Board to a Community Review Board. The second would be changing references from city manager to mayor and city council, and that would be a significant change because it would involve the city council in that process as well as just the mayor's office. And then finally, to codify our current practice of reviewing all officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths. And in addition, the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee made some recommendations to the mayor's office. The first one is to extend the length of the terms of board members from 1 year to 2 years. Currently, they're appointed every single year. I think the intent of that is to make it less political. The second is to develop a process to facilitate and audit the Category 2 complaints. Currently, the board only looks at those Category 1 complaints, which are the serious ones that Charmaine mentioned. But the charter doesn't limit us to just Category 1, and we think we have a responsibility to the community to make sure that the police department is adequately handling Category 2 complaints, which include things like procedure, courtesy, and sometimes it can be significant things like detention, search and seizure, and so forth. And so we want to make sure that that is being done properly without impeding the amount of time we have to spend on the serious cases, because it does take quite a bit of time. The average board member spends probably in excess of 30 hours a month of volunteering for the board. And then finally, as I already mentioned, the PS&L committee recommended there be funding provided to the board to provide for independent legal counsel when needed. And with that, we can answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. We are now going to have a presentation. I believe it's organized presentation by Women Occupy, Martha Sullivan or Kate? Yes. Okay. Okay, do you want the clerk to put 7.5 minutes on, or will you just monitor your own time?
Well, we actually understood we had 10, and that's what
Okay.
we prepared for.
Okay, and do you want to split it?
Yes, Martha Sullivan and I are going to,
So do you want me to,
half.
Do you want 5 minutes on the clock, or you're going to monitor yourselves?
Thank you. Yes. That would be fine. You could tell me if I'm up to 5. That would be fine. Good morning, council members and staff. My name is Kate Yavendetti. I'm a member of Women Occupy San Diego. I'm also a lawyer member of the National Lawyers Guild. We would like to thank the Charter Review Committee for giving us the opportunity again to discuss our proposals for CRB reform. We appreciate, there was a very robust discussion at the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee that some of you participated in, and we appreciate that, but we are very disappointed with the recommendations. Let me first say that we actually agree with the recommendations. They're just not enough. This is the time for the City Council to take real, firm, bold, and decisive action. Everything has come together right now. It's charter review time. You have the PERF report that came in. We have a new executive director who's doing, from what I can see, very good work. We have a new chief of police. We have a community supporting reform, in a community that actually has been energized and has learned a lot about what the CRB does and doesn't do. And we have all this opportunity right now. San Diego, in my view, is a forward-looking city, and we need to join the ranks of all of those other cities across the country who have truly independent and transparent civilian review boards. We all want the same thing. The police department, the city council, the community, Women Occupy, and the 27 community organizations that have joined us in endorsing this. We all want a truly independent and transparent process that works for everyone. We started our process with 5 main points, with independent investigators, subpoena power, name change, transparency and tracking, and diversity. And as we became more informed, we added a number of things, including the necessity for independent legal counsel. We put together a very complex proposal, which you have seen. And the reason that we did that, although we know that the Charter Review wants to minimize what goes in the charter, is that we knew, and the city attorney actually confirmed what we understood, that anything having to do with CRB reform has to be done through the charter. So we put in really everything that we wanted. And what we have seen, we know that many of these reforms can be done administratively, and we're very pleased to see that most of everything that Ms. Mosley and Mr. Case just talked about were all part of the reforms that we proposed, and we're very pleased to see that. We know they can be done administratively, and apparently that's happening, but we also believe that what we call the big 3, the things that are really the most important, need to be part of the charter, and that is independent legal counsel, which we understand you're talking about, but has to be in the charter, independent investigators, and subpoena power. We want to be very clear that we are not in any way criticizing the work of the CRB or the tremendous work that's done by the volunteers. We know about that work, and we know how hard it is, but we think that under the present charter that they are actually being prohibited in some way by doing a job that will be seen by the community and respected by the community. We just looked, we see that the last report was just out, and that there were 102 complainants, and out of all of those, there were a number that were sustained. But what jumps out at us, of course, is that all of them, they adopted the recommendations from Internal Affairs, with some corrections on, I believe, 16 of them. We also believe that the police department really wants to do a good job, and they have an interest in doing a good job. And we're not saying that their investigations are biased or shoddy or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an insider. But what we hear from CRB members is that in general, they're very good investigations. They could be perfect. But what's important is that the community doesn't trust it. And those of us in the legal field say things like, the appearance of conflict is the same as a conflict of interest. So if it even appears that there's a conflict, and almost anybody you talk to on the street will say, there's a conflict of interest in having the police do their own investigations, even though independent people are reviewing those investigations. So that's why we think it's absolutely essential to have independent investigators, and there really has been no problem with the county, who have had independent investigators ever since they have been in operation. Is that my time? That's the total end of my time? Okay, thank you. Oh, pardon? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Council. It's been about a year since we first started talking about this with you, with the Charter Review Committee and with other council members. And it's been a long process for us. We've done a lot of talking and listening in the community, talking with leaders of the CRB, of the County Law Enforcement Review Board, with council members and your staff, and out in the community. After all that we've done, we've worked on this for almost 3 years, and we've spent almost a year trying to get this included in the charter amendments that go before the voters this year. And we have to tell you, the cosmetic recommendations that have been made by the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee is a huge disappointment. There was reference made in past Public Safety Committee meetings by Councilmember Gloria that such changes were just kind of moving the chairs around the deck of the Titanic. I appreciate that the council wants to keep the charter or try to reduce the bulk of the charter. The problem we have, as the city attorney has said, that we can't change anything substantive about how the CRB is structured. Not the people who work there, not the individuals who have good intentions, but how it is fundamentally structured. We can't do that other than with a charter amendment. Or, to some degree, with probably, some limits, if the mayor will agree to some changes. And thus far, the mayor hasn't. I don't even know what the mayor's response to these recommendations are. We haven't heard that. So we have an instance here. We finally have a new annual report from the CRB from fiscal year 2015. And as Kate mentioned, out of about almost 300 allegations, 10% were sustained. And the CRB agreed with Internal Affairs on all of Internal Affairs' findings. And there's a reference in the report to, they don't like to have disagreements. And in 16 instances, there were changes made before it got to the full CRB for vote, but we don't know what those changes were. They could have been clerical, they could have been minor changes. We believe that this report, which also says that of 20 sustained findings in fiscal year 15 that required an evaluation by the CRB of discipline, only 9 of those were done. And the CRB agreed with what the police department did in all 9 of those cases. So we don't see from this report, there's nothing to change the public perception. There's absolutely nothing to change the public perception, and these 3 recommendations for charter amendments will do nothing to change the public perception either. And what we're really concerned about is that even if these 3 minor changes were passed in November, then we basically have to start all over again, because the council members, the majority of the council members who have been very involved, Councilmember Emerald, Councilmember Gloria, Councilmember Leitner, will no longer be on the council. So we're just dragging out the process. And in the meantime, the city taxpayers keep paying out millions and millions of dollars in court awards and claims. And just recently, in a lawsuit by a family who was unjustly arrested for entering their own home in City Heights and has filed a lawsuit, the city attorney argued to keep out of the record in that lawsuit the U.S. Department of Justice's findings about the inadequacy of supervision in the police department. So clearly, that right there demonstrates the conflict of interest. And we urge the Charter Review Committee to once again consider our full proposal.
Thank you, Ms.
And provide for independent investigators, independent legal counsel, and the subpoena power to make them matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn to public testimony, I'd like to know if there are any comments from the city attorney's office, the mayor's office, or independent budget analyst at this time. I know you're here for later conversation. Okay, with that, we will turn to public testimony. Once again, folks are limited to 2 minutes per person.
Beginning with speakers in opposition, Margaret Kuchnia, please come forward, followed by Richard Pincus, followed by Arlene Pincus. And when your name is called, please come forward. There are seats in the front for speakers. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the council and others. I too appreciate the fact that there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of work, a lot of consideration of this issue. However, I'm opposed, for the reasons that Martha stated, to this ballot measure because it doesn't go anywhere near far enough. In the course of the year that I've been involved in this, I've learned that there are many forms of oversight, many. I went to the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement conference and was surprised at how much is done around the country in this issue. So what we're after is not just a little better than what we're doing. What we're after is the best oversight possible for the city of San Diego. Let's set the mark very high. There have been a lot of arguments over the year about how we can do this. We want to give the new executive director more time. If we change too much of the council, it would be very disruptive to the system that's now kind of working. We might lose some good people if we change over. However, there will be change and there will be disruption. That's a given. The question is the change going to come through the foresight of our city council by making our CRB better? Or is it going to come from society having to push, and perhaps explode to make the change come? Society is changing at a very rapid rate. We all know that. The dominant culture is no longer the dominant culture. And it can no longer be, and it is a racist culture to some extent. We can no longer do that.
Thank you, ma'am.
My question is, what's wrong with independence? What's wrong with more independence? How can that?
Thank you, ma'am.
Richard Pincus, followed by Arlene Pincus, followed by Evie Kossauer.
Good morning. I would like to speak on behalf of including independent investigators. Part of the problem with the public perception of what goes on is that there is no independent evaluation of evidence. As we're moving into a situation in which the amount of evidence is going to be stronger, more copious, we need expert, independent investigators who can evaluate the evidence from the body cams, the dashboard cams. And only through that kind of independence will we be able to restore any kind of community trust in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene Pincus, followed by Evie Kossauer, followed by Hugh Moore.
So
I would like to speak in favor of what has been said so far, and maybe for a slightly different reason. In another state, in another life, I was the principal of an elementary school. And one day, some kids said something to me that forced me to ask the question, had there been sexual abuse of some kids? The state I was in required independent investigators right away with subpoena powers, and I was not allowed, as the supervisor and as somebody who had relationships with my staff, to have anything to do with investigating this. It turned out, and without telling the whole story, that nothing sexual had happened. The kids were hyper vigilant, and they had misinterpreted, and their parents agreed that they had misinterpreted. But I want to tell you what happened as a result of the fact that there was an independent investigation. Everybody believed the result. Nobody wondered if the principal liked the teacher, which I did. Nobody wondered if the kids' ideas or the kids' conversation had been put aside. Everybody trusted the result. So not only was the community protected, and was I protected from being doubted by my community, but the teacher was protected because no one thought maybe he did do something wrong. Everybody thought, sometimes kids can overreact to something innocent. And that was the end of it. I think that independent investigation not only protects the community, but it protects people who are doing their jobs well, but who sometimes fall into a situation where they're doubted. And independent investigators will put that aside, put that worry aside for the community. That's needed. It's really needed all over this country, not just in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. Evie Kossauer, followed by Hugh Moore, followed by Tegan McLean.
Good morning. I'm speaking for OWL. We older women in OWL do not see what makes the CRB independent from what we've seen. Like our ethics committee in the city, it should be independent. We believe the recommendations are a sign that an acknowledgement the change is evidently needed in this area. But it doesn't satisfy the independence and transparency that is needed to satisfy the public. We suggest that the WOSD, the Women Occupy proposal, go on the ballot or write the specific things we ask for into the charter. It's nice to hear that the CRB has been thinking of these things, and actually I heard that they are wanting some of them. But just thinking about them and asking for them if they're not in the charter doesn't mean that they will happen. If they get written in somewhere or voted on, then we know that there will be a real effort to make it happen. So please, I urge that in some way go into the charter, or that a ballot is put on the issue. And the issue is put on the ballot in November, which we've already signed up to do, so that wouldn't be hard to have happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh Moore, followed by Tegan McLean, followed by Stephanie Jennings.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. On the current question with the CRB, we're asking the basic question of how do we govern? And as the U.S. government governs, each one of the branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial, has the authority to act when the other acts out of line. Not just recommendations, but actual authority. They have the authority to investigate. They have subpoena power. Unfortunately, in this case, the CRB recommendations that are before you do not give the appropriate amount of authority to actually check and balance. A few years ago, Victor Ortega was shot by a police officer. The only investigation, according to the family who spoke with Bonnie DeMannis, was Bonnie DeMannis read the police report. There was no independent investigation. Later, a federal judge reviewed the same information that Bonnie DeMannis reviewed and said, I don't think this is accurate. I think there are questions here. Should the community question? Absolutely. So the unfortunate part is that unless the CRB is given independent investigators and given actual subpoena authority, you will never have the ability to create a real independent counsel and a real independent investigation. Thank you very much.
Tegan McLean, followed by Stephanie Jennings, followed by Dennis W. Dawson.
Hi, I'm here with Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's a national organization with the San Diego chapter, and we have endorsed the original proposal in its entirety. And if we do need to vote on this, if it has to go through the voters, we want to vote on it, not the minimized recommendations right now, but the full proposed recommendations created by Occupy. And I just want to say from my heart that I worry for my Black neighbors and friends in a way that I don't worry for myself, that the people that are meant to protect us all are a threat to some. And that's where the lack of trust is, and this is a way to begin setting that right. So thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Jennings, followed by Dennis W. Dawson, followed by Nancy Vaughn.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I've been involved in this process for quite a while. This has been an exercise in democracy on our part. We have worked very hard to reach all the stakeholders, to talk to everyone, to hear the stories, and to get it right. And we appreciate the distance that we've come, but I'm joining my endorsing community here in opposing the minimum proposal here. And this effort has been one of, started with witnessing some brutal arrests, including my own. We filed many, many complaints. Most of those complaints were lost or never found. We had lawsuits. The city settled with many of our complainants. And so it's been quite enlightening, the process itself, going through it directly. We've had people apply to the CRB and be told there's not enough seats available. So we know that even though there's a lot of effort right now by everybody sincerely trying to make these improvements, we know that without codifying it in a way that holds people accountable, you can have coming and going of members, of directors, of city council members, and you will have different points of view, but it needs to be in the charter. And so that's why I'm urging you to move the proposal forward, the full proposal that was presented, and get that on the charter review before the last opportunity, which is your next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis W. Dawson, followed by Nancy Vaughn, followed by Jude Litzenberger.
Good morning. I'm Dennis Dawson. I'm president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association. And I'm here because we want to see the relationship between the African American community and the San Diego Police Department greatly improved. Right now, that relationship is not a good relationship. Trust needs to be established between the African American community and the San Diego Police Department. Beyond that, trust needs to be established with all communities of San Diego and the San Diego Police Department. We think that the proposals that involve independent investigators, independent subpoena authority, and independent legal counsel are a must for consideration by the voters of San Diego. Let the voters of San Diego decide whether or not they're going to vote for this amendment to Section 43D of the Charter. We believe that even if you put these things on the ballot, it's not necessary that in every case before CRB that they're going to exercise the authority to use subpoena power. It may be that they rely, and they may be relying correctly in many cases, on internal affairs investigations report. But don't confine them to that IA report, because when you do things like that, and the citizens are aware of that, and they believe that this is too cozy a relationship, and therefore trust is destroyed. So what we would like to see is to let the citizens decide an ability and a pathway to establishing that trust. In terms of the independent legal counsel, we believe that the City Ethics Committee has it right, that we have independent legal counsel for that. And we want to make sure that the way that that legal counsel is determined.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up. Thank you.
Nancy Vaughn, followed by Jude Litzenberger, followed by Mary Otusa.
Good morning, you all. 2 minutes. I don't have time to thank you all individually, but thank you. I'm a member of the CRB. I've been there for 6 years. I am the second longest serving member of the board at the moment. For years, we have wanted to make changes to this board to be more transparent. I am so excited with the involvement of the community. These people are wonderful, and many of their ideas are being embraced, as Doug reported to you earlier. I want to make one comment on independent investigation. We do not want to get out of the business of reviewing what the police are doing. If we're going to improve their procedures, we have to see what they're doing, or we really can't make improvements. So when you see numbers that say we made changes, those are going to be significant changes. The changes that are purely you misspelled a name or you didn't do this right in the report, that doesn't show up in that count. We do that all the time. But the changes that are going to be made to allegations, to add an allegation, to change a finding, that's the 16 that we're reporting. And there may be others where we suggested them, only when we talked to the police, they had reason for what they had done that made sense to us. We're evaluating things in the sense we're doing an investigation of their investigation, and we're trying to make them do a better job. If we don't work with them, we can't improve their process. I'm here in opposition only because I don't think we should change the name of the board. I voted for the Citizens Review Board in 1988, and I'd like to keep the name because it means something to me personally. And I think, with all due respect, to add you all to the mix in terms of oversight of this board would make us more politicized, and we really need to maintain our independence. It was conceived as an independent board. We need to do that with great vigor to respect that. Thank you all so much.
Jude Litzenberger, followed by Mary Otusa, followed by Jeannie DeCrescenzo.
Thank you for hearing me. I served on this board from 2007 to 2011 when I was summarily removed for having some disagreements with the city attorney. I was never given process in that, and I'm not a bitter person about that, although I've been accused of that. Many of my friends still serve on that board, although they probably would be in trouble if they found out I was their friend. I want to thank you for raising this into your light, because since 1988, this has not been any sort of an issue for City Council. It's important that you pay attention. You have oversight responsibilities for things that go on in the San Diego Police Department and in affecting superior oversight of this board. I want to talk specifically about the city attorney's issue. As an attorney myself, I'm trained in law school about conflict. The city attorney in this situation represents the citizens. They represent the people who file a risk management complaint against the city. They represent the people who sue police departments. They represent the police department. They also represent people who prosecute the complainants in this area. That's 3 different conflicts. There's a lot of real conflict in this. When I was asked to be on the board, I was vetted by the mayor's office. The only question I was asked is, have you sued the city? Very unfair if it's supposed to be a balanced board. I submit to you that the city attorney has not yet noticed that process, noticed that conflict, and they definitely need to not be the key player in the selection of independent counsel. This board gets 2 different kinds of advice on how to follow board procedures like Brown Act and so like that. They've been very deficient in doing that. There's lots of secret meetings that happen. Secondarily, there's legal issues that are involved in the interpretation of policies that they need some independent counsel on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mary Otusa, followed by Jeannie DeCrescenzo, followed by Kathy Vanden Heuvel.
Good morning. My name is Mary Otusa, and I am a member of the CRB, but I'm here in my capacity as a voting citizen of San Diego. As I think we heard at the Public Safety in Livable Neighborhoods from Patrick Hunter, who is the executive director for the CLRB, which is the county-run oversight board. There is virtually no, both of these models are equally effective. I see no reason and am in opposition to making any changes beyond the changes that we have made within our own structure. We are operating very effectively as a board. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Jeannie Crescenzo, followed by Kathy Vanden Heuvel, followed by Andrea St. Julian.
If you had hired a commission to look at how we can improve trust in our community, you couldn't have done better than the women who have gotten together strictly on a voluntary basis, simply because they believe in trust, in justice in our community. And what they have come back with is a proposal that I've watched them go through a year of research and talking to people in the community and legal advisement. They've come back with something solid that can really make a difference. There's only two ways that we as citizens can make a change in all of this. We can either have a lot of money and pay for people to go out and get signatures and put something on the ballot, or we can depend on you to put this solid recommendation to improve the way people in this community trust our justice system. And I beg of you to consider that and to value, even though they haven't been paid a dime to do all this work, that it has a tremendous amount of value, and you should accept it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy Vanden Heuvel, followed by Andrea St. Julian. Then we'll turn to the speakers in favor.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Vanden Heuvel. I'd like to acknowledge what a privilege it is to come and speak before all of you. I'm on the CRB. I am the longest standing CRB member currently, and it has been an absolute privilege to serve on the CRB. Very quickly, I'd like to touch on the major issue that I believe the community has in regards to what type of model we have for the Citizens Review Board. When the voters had a choice, they had a choice between a review model, which we currently have, and an investigative model, which CLRB has. That's the county's oversight board. And they're both good models. They both have pluses and minuses. As a review board, we have access to everything Internal Affairs has. When it's an in-custody death or when it's an officer-involved shooting, we get to review the entire homicide investigation, including the autopsy reports and all of the different levels of investigation that entails. And it's about a binder that's about this thick. It takes a long time. So either method I think is valid. I appreciate the model that we currently have, and I think that that's probably something that is really for the voters to decide again whether we want to keep the model we have or whether that we've changed in our opinion as a community and we want an investigative model. Now, in regards to the specific proposals, there are two that I just want to be very cautious on. One is including Class 2 complaints. Class 1 complaints are what are considered to be more serious complaints. Those are the ones that we investigate. That is arrest, that is discrimination, and the Class 2 complaints would be considered something like a policy or a courtesy, thank you, a courtesy complaint. Now, we do review Class 2 complaints that are associated with Class 1 complaints, so we do see a subset of those complaints.
One concluding sentence, please.
I'd also just like to say that one of the things I really like about it is that there aren't a lot of politics involved in the board, and my fear is involving city council as well as the mayor will complicate that and change it for the worse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea St. Julian. Then we'll turn to speakers in favor.
Good morning, council members. I'm here today as an average citizen of San Diego. I have never before been moved to address this council on any other issue. But when I learned about the lack of independence of the Citizens Review Board, I was really shocked and dismayed. So I felt I had to come and speak to this council. Without independent counsel attorneys, without subpoena power, average citizens like myself can't trust any decision made by the board. So, I would ask this council to think, what is the purpose of the Citizens Review Board? What's the purpose of it? I would hope that one of the purposes is so that citizens like myself can feel that there has been an appropriate process, that the process has been followed, and that I can trust and have confidence in the results of that process. I don't have that now, and I don't think any citizen of San Diego, any resident of San Diego who knew the lack of independence could have that kind of trust. So I would ask you to really think about what the purpose of this is, and hopefully that will guide you to make the appropriate decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Prior to turning to speakers in favor, let me note for the record that Rita Pinkerton, Colleen Dietzel, Tennessee, Rachel Garver, Mary Robertson, Ben Ninas, and Marian Garza all submitted speaker slips in opposition but did not wish to speak. Turning to those in favor, Burl Flom, please come forward, followed by Tara Gentry, followed by Gil Cabrera.
Beryl Flom from the League of Women Voters of San Diego. Good morning. The Public Policy Committee of the League of Women Voters of San Diego has listened to presentations by Katie Avenditi from the Women Occupy San Diego, Lisa Sorcy, Chair of the Citizens Review Board, Patrick Hunter, Executive Officer of the County of San Diego Law Enforcement Review Board, and Lauren Vinson, Chair of CLRB. Mr. Hunter also served on the Citizen Review Board on police practices for 8 years. With a clear understanding of the process and practices of both of these review boards, the League of Women Voters of San Diego believes that an independent counsel would be an asset to the Citizens Review Board on police practices, not only to provide independence in the investigation, but to develop an investigative process that will be objective, enhance the public's trust, and be highly regarded by law enforcement officers. Thank you.
Tara Gentry, followed by Gil Cabrera.
Good morning. My name is Tara Gentry, and I am a lifetime San Diegan and born and raised. I am on the Citizens Review Board, but I'm here in my own capacity. And one of the things that I believe in is our mayor and our city council. And I fully support the recommendations that the PSNLN has put forth for the Citizens Review Board. I also want to talk about the community. I'm co-chair of our outreach committee. About 4 months ago, it was brought to my attention that the community does not have a good, and not so much a good, but a positive feel for the CRB. And so what I did was I put together a wonderful plan along with my fellow board members to go out and do some outreach. So we've been visiting communities and sort of educating them on what the board does. I feel that what we do right now and the model that we have right now is pretty awesome. I feel that with the leadership that we have, the new leadership, we've been able to seriously and substantially change a lot of things within our own board. I feel like putting this on a ballot would increase, to me, it feels like we're not trusting what the mayor set out to do or the city council does. I think it feels like, for me as a board member and as a private citizen, I sort of feel like you don't trust us as independent reviewers. I'm a citizen. We have several attorneys on the board, and what we do is independent, very independent. There's no cozy relationship. I don't care for some of the internal affairs people that I work with, but you know, it's a professional relationship. So I sort of feel like taking it and making it what it's not and saying things that are just sort of buzzwords, it really insults what I do as a volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you. Gil Cabrera.
Good
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gil Cabrera. I'm a resident of District 3. Thank you so much for considering this important issue. I am the former co-chair of the Use of Force Task Force of the San Diego Police Department from 2000, where we reviewed the police department's use of force procedures over the course of 18 months. I'm also the former chairman of the city's Ethics Commission, and so I have a fair amount of knowledge in terms of how an independent agency works within the city government. I am in favor of reforming the CRB. I am in favor of doing so with some additions, and that would be independent legal counsel so that we can make sure that the CRB doesn't have any conflicts with the city attorney, something that I'm particularly concerned with in the future. And also to make sure that the office has subpoena power as well as its own investigators. These are basic tools of investigation, of independence, of transparency, and it's something that is critically important for the CRB to have. And providing these tools, this transparency, and this effectiveness will only strengthen, I think, the relationship between law enforcement and the community that it polices. It will give confidence from the community of its law enforcement that when things happen, there is an independent and thorough review of what has happened, so that when the citizens see that that's happened, they can feel confident that we are in a situation where our law enforcement is doing the right thing. When things are done incorrectly, there is accountability. Those are critically important to an effective law enforcement mechanism. So I thank you for considering this. I hope that you will do so with the additions of, again, independent counsel, subpoena power, and independent investigators. Thank you so much.
That concludes the speakers on this item.
I want to thank everyone who came down today to speak to this item and the folks who have pursued it over the last year and a half. Thank you to Women Occupy and those who have brought this matter to our attention. Thanks to Ms. Mosley, the Police Department, and members of the Citizens Review Board for responding. I also appreciate the work done by Council President Pro Tem Emerald and her committee, PS Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods, the hearings that they had on this matter as well. I'm very supportive of the recommendations before us. I am especially supportive of the mayor and council sharing the authority and the work of establishing the rules and regulations for the review board. When the board was established, the city manager, a non-political office, performed that function. With our change to strong mayor, strong council form of government, it is appropriate that there are checks and balances and shared authority governing the Citizens Review Board. I move that we approve the recommendation from Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee to amend City Charter Section 43D to rename the Citizens Review Board as the Community Review Board on Police Practices. Replace the references to the city manager with mayor and city council, and add to the charter that the review board shall review all cases involving in-custody deaths and officer-related shootings, and to forward that particular action to council. And then the last three Public Safety and Livable Neighborhood Committee recommendations are directed to the mayor, and I would support asking the mayor to make these changes and report back to the Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods Committee with the completion of recommend the mayor's office extend the terms of the volunteer from 1 year to 2 years, recommend the mayor's office develop a process by which community review board members can audit Category 2 complaints and pull specific cases for review, and recommend the mayor's office include funding for independent counsel to provide additional advisory capacity to the community review board, and request that the city attorney bring forward a contract for approval to the full council in FY 2017. Notes on these last three recommendations are that with the charter amendment, then there would be changes to the municipal code in which we would lay out the parameters for what would be then the community, let me see if I get it right, Community Review Board on Police Practices after November, which could include a lot of the items that are suggested here today. With that, Council President Pro Tem Emerald.
Thank you very much, and I'll second that motion. I appreciate your support on this. And I appreciated the support of our committee members as we discussed this very important issue, and one that is highly emotional in our community. It came out of really a disastrous incident involving the community and our police department. Those of us who have been around a while remember Sagan Penn, a young man who was essentially attacked by police. And his life was destroyed. An officer died at the scene. Another one, I think, called rightly out as a racist. These are my perceptions of history, but it was strong enough that we recognized here in the city of San Diego that we need the community to come together and look at these police incidents and make a call. And I want you to know, in the interest of full disclosure, I really wanted to see something more like the county's law enforcement review board, with the independent investigator as well as an independent counsel. But it is a totally different system, and basically what we would be talking about is throwing it out and starting over again. I'm not it's not my way to just toss the baby out with the bathwater. It's how can we fix the system we have now, and also how can we offer support to the volunteers who are giving of their time to go through files and now what would otherwise be reams of videotape, digital tape, of encounters between citizens and the police. So I think this is a good start, but it's just a start. And I want to thank Women Occupy and all of the organizations listed here as collaborators for bringing this discussion forward and holding government's feet to the fire. The police department recognizes it, and I think the Citizens Review Board understands this as a call to action, and for us on the council, a call to action to make sure that the systems we create are systems that are fair to everybody, where there is oversight. A mention was made that at 2 o'clock this afternoon in our Public Safety Livable Neighborhoods Committee, the Citizens Review Board, the Executive Director, Ms. Mosley, will be there with members of the board talking about their plan of action to reform what they do and make sure they get a different kind of result. And right now, it's about public perception. And while perception may not always be true, for some people, perception is reality. And I think we absolutely have to address that. So we welcome that report. And it's not just what we plan on doing, it's when we're going to set deadlines. And starting with this calendar year, we want to see regular reports back from the CRB on what the challenges are and how we can be supportive of your mission. So with that, thank you everybody for being part of this process. Again, this is the first step. Let's stay involved. And somebody made a comment about no openings on the CRB. Ms. Mosley, would you mind joining us and telling us, do you have some openings on the CRB? Because I'll tell you, I've approached people who have been very vocal, insisting that there's something wrong. And I've asked them, then step up and volunteer. And most people say, well, I just don't have time, because it is time consuming, okay? So do you have some openings on the CRB?
We have 5 vacancies on the board right now, and we have 6 perspectives. We can have up to 23 perspectives. So our community outreach board has been out and engaged in the public. I've been out heavily recruiting individuals to come and, interview for the board.
Okay. And
so yes, we're always recruiting.
Okay. And so I'm asking the people who are here today, who are holding up their signs, who are insisting upon change, let's create the change that we want to see. And I'm asking you, apply for these positions. If you have to come through these council offices, do so. I'm happy to submit nominations anytime for anybody. And if it's new ideas, new blood we need, then let's make that happen. That's the next step for so many people who say we need change. Let's be the change. Thank you very much, and we'll see you this afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Director of Legislative Affairs.
I defer to Councilmember Kate.
Councilmember Kate? Don't let me forget you then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to echo the comments by Council President Pro Tem Emerald and really thank her for holding the number of hearings we've had on this issue, doing so in a very positive manner. I think there's been a lot of constructive criticism, good thoughts, and good dialogue that's occurred at the meetings. And I thank everyone in the audience too who's come and met with me. I've always learned a whole bunch about these processes over my first 18 months or so in office, and really appreciate the effort that's been put into it, and the process that's unfolded and what's to come as well too. Because as Council President Pro Tem Emerald said, this is definitely not the last step in this discussion. And more than anything else, I want to thank the members of the CRB and learning more and more about the time that's put into it and the number of hours every single month that is put into this. This is very much a Herculean task to go forward, and we're not paying you anything for it. So it's definitely something that is not lost, I think, upon this council in terms of the effort that's put in. And again, I would echo the comments as Ms. Emerald made in terms of wanting to apply. I've said it, I think, at every single meeting. I've said it at every single council or committee meeting, not only on this board, but other boards as well, too. Just inquired, we haven't received any input about this board thus far, even though all the times we've mentioned it, all the community groups we've come and spoke to, questions I've been asked about it. And so we're asking, again, almost pleading to have people apply to serve on this. I know it's not probably the most extravagant job, the one that is going to get names and headlines or anything like that in terms of your effort, but it's something that's well worth the effort and the work that's put into it. So supportive of the action today. Look forward to what's to come moving forward. I'll make one comment regarding the independent counsel. I know Council Member Gloria yesterday made a statement about him asking for dollars to be put into for independent investigators. I don't think it's something that needs to go through a charter amendment to be done. I think if there's a will to put it on there and have the dollars associated with it, that's something that can probably most likely be done. So we'll see what happens when it gets to budget time and the response is back. But want to just say again, thank you to Ms. Leiner and Ms. Emerald for documenting these items, and to the members of the public for coming to speak on them.
Thank you. Director of Legislative Affairs.
I just wanted to take a moment to highlight the Citizens Review Board recommendations as they were outlined in Ms. Mosley's presentation. They were for additional CRB staff resources, request legal analysis providing more information in the case review, rationale and complaint letters, and enhance the accessibility of policies and procedures. In case the committee would also like to refer these CRB recommendations to the Mayor and City Attorney's Office for further review and possible implementation.
Is that acceptable to the seconder of the motion? I think it's great.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
So everyone clear on the motion? Second? All in favor, please vote. No, I take that back. Please vote. You can vote if you're not in favor. With the buttons. I apologize. I'm used to the committee room. Please call the roll. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for your time today.